Another month, another lore compilation. So growth for my channel has been crazy this past month. Who would have guessed the best way to grow is to actually post stuff here? I want to thank everyone who's been watching my videos, subscribing, coming to my live streams. I love getting the feedback and interacting with y'all, and I definitely look forward to uploading every day. Anyway, on to the compilation, all of my videos from January 2024. So yeah, around the time of Sonic Adventure, Sonic's eye color did change from black to green, and both Archie and Fleetway did stories to explain the change. Fleetway's explanation is much more simple. In Sonic the Comic number 175, while in battle with Chaos, he slams into the liquid monster, absorbing energy directly from it, subsequently turning his eyes green. While his sclera returns to white, his iris remains green. The Freedom Fighters do tests on him to ensure nothing else is wrong, but Sonic quickly gets fed up with the testing, despite the fact that he previously complained of seeing a violet glow. The violet glow turns out to not be from his eyes, but from Tikal attempting to communicate with him from the past. The Archie one is harder to explain, as this whole story is printed backwards. Not as a mistake, by the way, this is intentional. This issue, Sonic the Hedgehog number 71, is even branded probably the strangest Sonic issue you will ever read. But there's definitely weirder. Due to earlier storyline stuff, Knothole Village was slightly displaced in time, causing a time beam from one of Robotnik's satellites to fire upon it in an attempt to correct it, but threatening to destroy the whole planet and the very fabric of time if it continued firing, leading Sonic to have to draw fire from the beam using the energy of a Super Emerald, which somehow turned his eyes green? Yeah, Sally doesn't get it either. It is very funny that both of these involve time travel in some way. So Archie did cover Sonic Boom, but not as part of the main universe. Archie's Sonic Boom series ran for a total of 11 issues, sticking very close to the tone of the show, with even some writers from the show helming some issues. While I did say it is an 11-issue series, that isn't quite true, as issues 8, 9, and 10 tie into the Worlds Unite event, with the only Boom characters appearing being Styx, Comedy Chimp, and Fastidious Beaver. Everyone's favorite characters. You know, because of this, you can technically say Sally showed up in Sonic Boom. It'll make people mad, but it's technically correct. But this does leave the series with only 8 real issues, before Archie announced that the series was coming to an end and that the Sonic Boom stories would appear in other books. But, while Sonic Super Digest did reprint some Sonic Boom stories, they never printed any new ones. This announcement took Sonic Boom show writer Greg Hahn by surprise, having not been told that the series was ending. The Archie Comics social media team assured both him and other Sonic Boom writer Alan Denton that they would find a home for their stories.
But you didn't.
So yeah, whatever stories they wrote are just lost media at this point. Okay, so while I was sick, some weird discourse popped up about whether or not Sonic playing guitar was a thing started by the American side of the franchise. And while he does make frequent use of a guitar in the American-produced cartoons, the answer to that question is no. Way back to the original concept art for the first Sonic game and the tie-in Sonic the Hedgehog story comic, Sonic is featured as part of a rock band, though he was the lead singer in this case. But in a chapter of the Koro Koro Sonic manga, published August 29th, 1992, Sonic is depicted playing electric guitar, while his alter ego Nicky is depicted as a violinist. This predates the airing of any Western Sonic cartoon by over a year. My only hot take about this is that I think Sonic should play bass, as that's the instrument that Sonic 1 and 2 composer Masato Nakamura plays in his band Dreams Come True. And I think it's important to have a reference/tribute to someone whose work was pretty instrumental. Scourge wasn't the first Tenrec to appear in the Sonic comics. This is Gold the Tenrec. First appearing in the Sonic Universe arc, The Silver Age, she is a refugee from an alternate world that was decimated by a creature known as the Second Devourer, a creature with some probable relation to the Time Eater from Sonic Generations. She was able to escape and was subsequently exploited by the Onyx City Council. Like Silver, Gold is psychic, though she seems to lack his abilities of telekinesis and instead be more telepathic, and also seems to have the ability to open portals to other realities. Her creator, Evan Stanley, confirmed that Gold is in fact bi, with a preference for girls, even drawing her crushing on Sally, Blaze, and Rouge, which is pretty cute. Unfortunately, her final appearance saw her, Silver, and company falling through a portal to a plot that would never be resolved by the end of the comic. Evan Stanley has revealed what the plan was, however, that they would end up in Sonic's time, Silver in the real world and everyone else in the digital world, and this would then open up to a series of time travel stories in the same vein as several other serialized science fiction series. While Evan Stanley says that she would love to write Gold again, she's expressed doubt in her being able to do so in the IDW comics, and thinks it would be more likely for her to end up writing an original story with her, or writing a story inspired by the arc she appeared in. You won't believe what Ken Penders posted on his website! a post about censorship in comics. But also boobies! In reality, this post is primarily a meditation on the fact that he doesn't have to worry about editorial oversight when independently publishing a book, as well as setting expectations for what's going to be in the Laura Sue Chronicles, because, hey, we're kinda closing in on that finally getting released. There's one part of the post I really want to share. He says, "When I wrote my Knuckles stories, I can't tell you how many kids I met at conventions who told me they loved the Knuckles series because the main character was just like them, a product of a broken home. These kids knew their parents weren't getting back together and were appreciative when I was just as honest stating that there was no happy ending for Knuckles with his parents either." You know, there's a lot to say about Ken, but I also don't necessarily think he's being disingenuous here. I clown on Penders' stuff a fair bit, but his Knuckles solo books ran for roughly 3 years. In comics, that's a pretty respectable run. Some group of people had to be enjoying it, and I'm sure it connected with those people on some level as well. And just by virtue of that, yeah, I'm glad his books exist. But that being said, Ken! So what Sonic voice actors do I hear when I read the Archie comics? Funnily enough, I do think Archie wrote Sonic well enough to encapsulate the chosen voice actors for each era. So from the beginning of the series to roughly issue 71, along with pretty much every classic Sonic appearance in both Archie and IDW, I hear Jaleel White.
A long way from the nearest chili dog stand, that's for sure.
Then from roughly issue 72 to right before the Mega Man crossover, I hear Ryan Drummond.
Those robots are a total pain in the...
Ryan Drummond was actually the first Sonic voice I heard, so I do end up defaulting to him a lot, and sometimes he does take over the other voices I'm going to mention. Post-reboot, I feel encapsulates Jason Griffith's take on the character very well.
Ha! I'd never leave a buddy in the lurch, Chip!
As a bonus, Roger Craig Smith is obviously who I hear in the IDW comics.
I bet Tangle would love climbing around these ruins.
But to me, the weirdest one that I hear is Martin Burke, the OVA voice for the Fleetway comics. Even though these lack any real connection, they have incredibly similar vibes.
So now we can get down to the real fight. The last Sonic standing will be the winner.
Fang the Hunter has been getting a fair amount of attention lately, both previously being a central character in Sonic Superstars and also getting his own IDW miniseries starting this month. In celebration of that, let's talk about the time the Archie comics gave him a twin sister. Nick the Weasel, like her brother, was both a bounty and treasure hunter. At some point she partnered up with Fiona Fox, though the two would frequently run afoul of Rouge the Bat. In her next set of appearances, she would partner up with her brother as they both had been contracted to take out Knuckles. It's also revealed during this time that she has a ship that's literally the Millennium Falcon.
I think George Lucas gonna sue somebody.
The two succeed in capturing Knuckles and receive their bounty, but Knuckles in his Chaos form manages to escape after they depart, and seeing this, the two turn down attempting to capture him again. This would be Nick's final appearance outside of flashbacks, but the Archie Sonic Encyclopedia featured a new unused design for her by artist Jay Axer. The encyclopedia also stated that she either retired or was eliminated by her brother. And with what Fang did in his following set of appearances, that's not unlikely. And being that she was created by Penders, unlikely we'll see her again. Let's cover my headcanon voices for Eggman in the comics. For the entirety of Fleetway, even pre-design change, it's Long John Baldry.
I've called you all together because you're the worst assortment of low-life mercenaries I ever made!
While we've pretty much only heard a comedic take from his Robotnik, I have heard some dramatic roles from him, and it definitely fits the more serious moments that can appear in Fleetway.
You're well aware our organization cannot tolerate failure of any kind.
With Archie from the beginning until the design change in issue 75, I hear Jim Cummings.
Snively, what color is my heart?
Then for the entire remainder of Archie, I hear Dean Bristow.
This time I'll let you go, but the next time we meet, you won't be so lucky.
Who, just as an aside, is my favorite Eggman voice. I just really dug how sinister sounding he could get. Then for IDW, I hear Mike Pollock.
Well, Sonic, prepare to be sunk!
Classic Eggman is kind of an interesting situation in that I end up cycling between both Mike Pollock and Edwin Neal, the OVA voice.
It's been a long time, hasn't it? Good to see you again, Sonic.
Okay, I will talk about this character, but I'm not going to discuss who they may be based on, because that's not a topic I'm ever going to be interested in covering. Both the writer of this episode and one of the showrunners of Sonic Boom have denied that this character is based on anyone in specific. Do I believe them? Not even slightly, but we're going to take them at their word. Mark the Tapir first appears in the Sonic Boom episode, The Biggest Fan, and as the episode name implies, he is Sonic's biggest fan. Eventually, Sonic ends up hiring him as a personal assistant, and it works out for some time, until Mark sets up an accident that leaves Sonic bedridden, at which point the episode becomes a parody of Stephen King's Misery. I think they do also sneak in an OVA reference.
Wouldn't it make more sense if I was Sonic?
Quiet, Tails!
Shut up, Tails!
Eventually, Sonic finds out he isn't really injured and defeats Mark. Unlike most antagonists on the show who become recurring villains, Mark just ends up becoming a background character, showing up for random gags. Clove the Pronghorn is a character from the Archie comics and is a general, or egg boss, of Robotnik's army. She had joined the Eggman Empire after her younger sister Cassia had developed a potentially fatal disease, and Eggman offered to cure it through the process of cyberization, which is basically a form of roboticizing. However, Eggman lied. Cyberization actually did nothing to cure her condition, and he actually doesn't understand what's wrong with her in the first place, commenting he's not that kind of doctor. And the only thing keeping Cassia well is the treatment he is regularly providing her, essentially locking Clove and Cassia into some form of permanent servitude to the Empire. Clove decides to shelter her sister from this information, letting Cassia believe that one day they'll be able to leave the Eggman Empire. In terms of weaponry, Eggman provided Clove with a staff that can turn into an energy scythe. According to her creator, Aaliyah Baker, Clove likes girls. While never acknowledged on panel as she was never in a clearly romantic situation, it did end up influencing how her dynamic with Sally was written. Unfortunately, as the Archie comics ended very abruptly, we never saw a proper resolution to Clove and Cassia's story. But, you know.
Maybe someday.
Sonic Man is an NPC that first appeared in Sonic 06, a man who fancied himself a superhero and modeled himself after his idol, Sonic. He challenges both Sonic and Silver to races in side missions. He'd be a strange one-off character if it were not for his cameo in Archie Sonic number 270, which shows him as a tokusatsu-styled hero whose show airs weeknights at 8 p.m. and is produced by Breezy the Hedgehog's Breeze Media. This character would have been expanded upon in the cancelled Archie Sonic number 293, which would have featured a more in-depth look at this Sonic Man show that would have this time shown an entire Ranger team for Sonic Man, including equivalents for Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Cream, with the designs being done by Sonic artist Tracy Yardley. Two things of note with these human designs: as Knuckles is generally seen as black-coded by the fandom, Ian Flynn informed Yardley that his human counterpart would be black, and Yardley chose to make Amy's human counterpart Hispanic. Eggman would have been a combination of a couple different past Robotnik designs, and Cheese would have been a bad marionette. Funnily enough, not the first Sonic Ranger team, as Spider-Man writer Dan Slott introduced Sonica Man to Sonic Super Special number 12, which is a parody of Gotcha Man, a series that, according to some sources, may have had an influence on Super Sentai as a whole. And last night, Sonic Man just beat Mephiles, Shadow, and Vector in a poll for which Sonic character would receive new official art from Sonic Channel. So the legend of Sonic Man lives on. Thunderbolt the Chinchilla is a character from the Archie comics and is an egg boss in Robotnik's army. Having undergone the process of cyberization, as her name suggests, Eggman has given her the ability to fire electric blasts. Probably due to her short size, Eggman has also provided her with a large mech suit. While her first encounter with Sonic and friends appeared to be going her way in the beginning, Sonic's unexpected transformation into his werehog form led to an abrupt ending to their battle. Unlike most egg bosses who harbor some form of resentment of Eggman, Thunderbolt not only holds him in high reverence, but seems to have a crush on him as well. Alright, Mephiles fans, I'll give you this one. Despite not having any plot relevance to the Archie comics, Mephiles, along with Iblis and Solaris, appear in the Archie Sonic Encyclopedia, complete with new art, with an entry that basically confirms Sonic 06 happened just off-panel in Archie continuity. Most notably, however, the last sentence reads, "While the time paradox seems to have safely dealt with Solaris and preserved the world, you never know what slips between the cracks of time," which definitely left the door open for Mephiles to return. We later see Mephiles in the Scourge lockdown arc as an inmate of the Zone Jail. This could very well be an alternate universe version of the character, but escaping destruction through the cracks of time is exactly something I could see Mephiles being arrested by the Zone cops for. This version of Mephiles is later seen escaping from Zone Jail as well. The role of Eclipse in the Shadowfall arc was initially occupied by Mephiles, but Sega decided against the idea. Then the unreleased Sonic Universe number 96 was to feature a new character named Null, who is very visually similar to Mephiles. However, even with the leaked pencils for this issue, we know practically nothing about the character. Personally, I wonder if he was going to have some type of relation to the Second Devourer, as roughly in this time period, Ian Flynn stated on his forum that he believed Mephiles and the Time Eater had some form of connection. Maw the Thylacine is yet another egg boss in Robotnik's army. First introduced in the Sonic Universe arc, Eggman's Dozen, he is called upon with the other egg bosses to help Eggman deal with the Naugus twins. According to the letters from the editor page in Sonic Universe number 85, he is obsessed with robots and perfection, while also being incredibly curious and apparently having his own plans for the world. Gives me Starline vibes a little bit. Like most other egg bosses, he has undergone the process of cyberization, with his specific enhancement being a mechanical jaw that allows him to devour his enemies in an almost Kirby-like fashion. The specifics of how this works is not really elaborated on, not even really clear where the absorbed opponents go, but is probably referencing how wide real-life Thylacines could open their mouths. The last we see of him in the comic has Eggman give him a new roboticizer to test, but unfortunately the Archie comics were not afforded the opportunity to explore this character further before the comic ended. So Sonic has interacted with real hedgehogs a few times. In the 36th issue of Archie's Sonic X comic, the city of Station Square is running a pet show where the best in show will receive a collar studded with a Chaos Emerald. Eggman enters his minion Bokun, dressed as a cat, and Sonic, never one to avoid a challenge, has Chris enter him as a pet. While in line for registration, Sonic spies an actual hedgehog. This probably doesn't look anything like the hedgehogs you're familiar with, and that's because this is a European hedgehog. Sonic's equally confused, asking where its gloves and sneakers are. Then, Sonic Super Digest number 1 features a section where Professor Pickle and his assistant Cucumber talk all about hedgehogs. This section also featured new art of Sonic racing a real hedgehog, and one with Sonic, Silver, and Amy interacting with the hedgehog while Shadow, judging by his eyeline, stares at Amy. This section also makes reference to the concept of the hedgehog's dilemma, which is kind of funny when pairing it with art of Shadow acting aloof. So yes, the metal virus had its origins in the Archie comics. In the July 8th, 2019 episode of writer Ian Flynn's podcast, Ian did reveal that the metal virus was meant to occur post-issue 300 of the mainline series had the book not been cancelled. Maw the Thylacine, mentioning the new roboticizer, was actually setting this up specifically, even showing us the would-be first victim. The storyline actually had a chance to appear even earlier than that, as the idea's inception was with an editor at Archie pushing Ian to make a zombie story to capitalize on The Walking Dead's popularity, but was pushed back due to the fact that Archie was already releasing the series Afterlife with Archie, and they wanted to avoid releasing too much zombie content at once. Ian's also clarified that the only shared element between how the plot would have been in Archie and how it is in IDW is the virus itself, and that the material story would have been completely different. But even then, at the time Archie ended, Ian stated that he did not have the full story figured out. Jules Hedgehog is Sonic's father in the Archie comics. A soldier in the Great War, Jules was mortally wounded by an overlander. In an attempt to save his brother's life, Uncle Chuck put him through the roboticizer, unaware that Robotnik had already modified it, leaving those who had gone through the process under his control. This also makes him the first victim of the roboticizer. While under Robotnik's control, he roboticizes his wife in a particularly horrifying selection of panels. Sometime later, Uncle Chuck does manage to restore Jules' free will, and in time, he does reunite with Sonic. While Jules was the first affected by the roboticizer, he is also the last to still be affected by it, as when the planet was de-roboticized, Jules is the only one who is still a robot, and the reason for this is found to be that due to the injuries he sustained before being roboticized, returning to his organic form would lead to the end of his life. Despite his predicament, he does resume the normalist life he can. He is offered another chance to return to his non-robotic form by Naugus, but he turns him down, as you should not trust evil wizards. The Sonic OVA is probably one of my favorite pieces of Sonic media, and it's clearly a lot of other people's too, since everyone loves putting Knuckles in a hat. That influence, of course, crept its way to the Archie comics, not only lightly inspiring arcs, but characters from it straight up making appearances. When issue 101 begins, Nate Morgan is trapped in Robotropolis with Eggman, and just as Sonic goes in to save him, reality begins to warp, dropping him in the world of the OVA, complete with both Princess Sarah and Metal Robotnik. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all do battle with Eggman's machines before reality warps again, the last we'll see of the OVA for quite some time. Princess Sarah then makes an astoundingly small cameo in Sonic the Hedgehog number 257. It's incredibly funny that the most enduring feature of the OVA is Knuckles' cool hat. So yes, characters from writer Evan Stanley's fan comic, Ghosts of the Future, have made a handful of cameos in official Sonic material. Starting back at Archie Sonic number 257, we get cameos from Silver's parents, Ginger and Artie. Artie is colored a little bit different than normal, probably to make it less obvious, but Evan Stanley has confirmed that it is indeed him. This issue also sees Sonic rescue Silver's younger sister Venice as well. I suppose she would be his older sister in this context, because this is in Sonic's time and Silver hasn't been born yet. But the most interesting cameo to me is that a sketched out version of issue 11, page 3 of Ghosts of the Future appears in the background of a panel. Then in IDW Sonic number 64, we not only see Silver's sister Venice, but his other sister Cicely as well, and they do stick around for a good couple panels. Ghosts of the Future is a fun fan comic, and it's really cool that Evan got to reference her characters in official media. Cosmo is a character who appears pretty much exclusively in the final season of Sonic X. Left as the last of her plant-like kind, she crash lands on Earth and joins the main cast in an interplanetary search for the Chaos Emeralds. Most notably, she ends up in an ongoing romance with Tails, but unfortunately their love was not meant to be, as Cosmo sacrifices herself at the end of the anime to defeat the Metarex, with Tails having to be the one that pulls the trigger. All that can be recovered of her is a seed, which Tails plants in his workshop, which does sprout, leaving the possibility that she and Tails may reunite someday. Like I said, she's pretty much stuck exclusively to the third season of Sonic X, but she has a handful of small appearances. While the Archie Sonic X comics all take place before Season 3, that didn't stop her from getting a cameo in the pages of issue 5 and on the cover of issue 21. There is potentially a really small reference to her in Sonic Chronicles, with there being a potted plant similar to the one we last saw her in Tails' workshop. Unfortunately, Chronicles' place in the timeline is especially dubious, due to things that happened. Thanks, Ken! Fortunately, however, that's not our last potential cameo. The 2021 Sonic Channel Winter artwork obviously features that same potted plant. And while there are a fair amount of plants in the background in episodes of Tails Tube, one stands out. Even though it feels unlikely she'll ever make a proper return to the series, it doesn't seem like the folks at Sega have forgotten her. Hypersonic remains probably the most underutilized Sonic form, only appearing in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. This isn't for lack of trying though. The files of Sonic Mania contained an unused graphic that kinda indicates Hyper forms were planned for the game, and Ian Flynn has stated that he pitched Hypersonic for inclusion in Sonic Frontiers, but was turned down.
I actually pitched that. I got a polite no thank you in response.
Even the Archie comics, which tended toward giving the spotlight to underappreciated aspects of the franchise, chose to go with an original form, Ultrasonic, instead of Hypersonic. Despite this form is kept alive in people's memories via fan works, one of those being the unofficially official Fleetway follow-up, Sonic the Comic Online, which features Hypersonic in its The Battle for Drax story. While Fleetway's more demonic Supersonic is fueled by chaos energy that was tainted by all of the evil on Mobius, Sonic gains this new hyper form when tapping into an entirely pure reservoir of chaos energy. All of the power, none of the drawbacks. Maybe someday we'll see Hypersonic take the spotlight in official media once again, but until then, we'll always have fan works. In issue 192 of Archie Sonic, Scourge sneaks into Sonic's home late at night with the intent of assaulting him, only to come face to face with Sonic's father, Jules. Jules confronts him, calling him a coward for trying to attack Sonic while he's sleeping, something that really gets under Scourge's skin. Scourge launches into a rant about his own father, who had helped bring about a time known as the Great Peace on his world, seemingly at the cost of neglecting his son. The Great Peace eventually led to the world stagnating, letting Scourge gain the opportunity to take over. Then Scourge turns to threaten Jules, but he's not intimidated, stating that he won't go down without a fight, and that while Scourge may not have cared about his father, Sonic cares about him. Scourge, taken aback by an unexpected show of force and happening across an actual loving family, leaves with tears in his eyes, telling himself that everything Jules said was a bunch of empty words. Honey the Cat is a character who was intended to appear in 1996's Sonic the Fighters, but despite her data existing in the game, would not become an official playable character until the game's 2012 re-release. She is based on a character of the same name from the fighting game Fighting Vipers, and though she was cut from the original release of Sonic the Fighters, her palette-swapped version makes a cameo in the opening of Fighting Vipers' Sega Saturn port. Honey would get a proper appearance in the Champions arc of Archie Sonic. As she didn't have a properly established character, much of her character was adapted from her counterpart in Fighting Vipers, with her primarily participating in the tournament to promote her fashion line, though she is in fact an extremely competent fighter. She has also made cameos in the IDW Classic Sonic comics, one extremely visible one in the 2021 Free Comic Book Day special, and another in Amy's 30th anniversary special that you really gotta look for. And who knows, maybe one day she'll get some dialogue again. So, not quite. Hot Honey is the band that Amy is, by her own admission, currently obsessed with. Shadow bought her tickets, and the two went to a concert together. Now, we knew this band didn't have a relation to Honey the Cat because Amy stated her favorite member of the band was named Jeremy B. Sega has actually released official art featuring them in December of 2023, with their designs being references to Sonic and his siblings in Sonic Underground. The Manic and Sonya Bs really stick out. But while we're here, let's talk about who they're touring with. Cyber singer Mika was first referenced in issue 54 of IDW Sonic, with Cubot owning a figurine of her. While she's obviously a parody of Hatsune Miku, who Sonic has had crossovers with before, some of her design elements clearly reference back to earlier concepts for Sonic's design. I think it's neat to have in-universe pop stars. I'm sure there's other ones I could talk about. Okay, let's talk about Sonic's name.
Thought your middle name was The.
So, in issue 0 of the Archie Sonic miniseries, written by Mike Gallagher, Sonic says that Speed is his middle name, before pausing and saying, "Actually, it's Maurice, but don't tell anyone, okay?" This is a fact that's reasserted in issue 53 when Sonic reunites with his father, who gleefully calls him Maurice in front of Knuckles and Antoine. But before Sonic's father can reveal Sonic's actual first name, Sonic interrupts him, stating his name is Sonic, period. Thus began an era of confusion, as Ken Penders allegedly stated on his website that he intended for Sonic's first name to be Ogilvy. That original post seems to be lost to time, but he has since confirmed, yeah, that's a thing he said. However, this name never made it to print. Even the Archie Complete Sonic Encyclopedia, which makes a reference to Sonic legally changing his name, does not directly mention the name Ogilvy. So your stance on this name's validity is based on how much you take Ken at his word. Both these names faded from use over time, until in certain territories, the Netflix description for Sonic Prime stated that Sonic's middle name is Maurice, clearly referencing back to the earlier material. Now, how much weight you give a Netflix description to influence canonicity is completely up to you. Darkspine Sonic is a super form that only appears in Sonic and the Secret Rings. Rather than utilizing the 7 Chaos Emeralds for the transformation, he utilizes the red, purple, and green World Rings, which individually represent rage, sadness, and hatred, which makes sense as he taps into the form after Shara passes. This super form was created by Morio Kishimoto, who once stated it was inspired by the stripes on a Dodge Viper. While the form has appeared in mobile games like Sonic Dash and Force's Speed Battle, it seems that at least for the foreseeable future, it's not planned to appear in any mainline games at all, and I'd assume by extension the comics. Mina Mongoose is a character who appears in the Archie comics. Orphaned through a combination of the Great War and Robotnik's conquest, Mina was granted the power of super speed by the all-powerful Mammoth Mogul. She would first meet Sonic in issue 76 when he rescues her and a group of other Mobians from capture, and he subsequently comforts her about her not being able to rescue her captured loved ones. This would lead to her developing feelings for Sonic, despite the fact that Sonic was already dating Sally at the time.
She said cheater on his butters.
She would make a proper attempt to join the Freedom Fighters before Sonic discovered that she was a very talented singer, and pushed her to perform publicly despite her stage fright, to great success, and this would lead to her becoming a genuine pop star during Sonic's year in space. Also in that time, she would get a boyfriend, another mongoose named Ash, who acted as her manager and was a bit of the jealous type, and Mina's feelings only complicated when Sonic returned. Funnily enough, in the possible alternate future of Light Mobius, she doesn't end up with Sonic or Ash, but Tails, who she shared very little on-panel interactions with in the present day. Something happened, I don't know. Mina is a character with an especially long history, so there's tons more to potentially cover with her. Dark Sonic is a transformation that only appears in a single episode of Sonic X. In episode 67, when both in proximity to the counterfeit Chaos Emeralds, which made him feel uneasy, and being driven into a rage by seeing Chris knocked out and Cosmo terrified, Sonic transforms into this form and rips apart two Metarecs with very little effort, before Eggman appears and manages to calm Sonic down. Counting from the moment he transforms to the end of the last shot we see him in this form only appears for about a minute and 9 seconds. Despite that, most of the Sonic fandom loves it, as much like Hypersonic, it lives on through its heavy use in fan works. While Sega has made references to this form a handful of times, it doesn't seem like it's going to make an appearance anytime soon, since those working on the series are a bit more realistic about its incredibly short screen time.
I don't have anything against Dark Supersonic himself. I'm just tired of the hype over a non-moment.
Mammoth Mogul is an antagonist in the Archie comics. Born thousands of years in the past, he gained immortality and nigh infinite powers when a Chaos Emerald had become lodged in his chest. In the many centuries preceding our main story, he founded a cult known as the Order of Ixis, as well as used his abilities to craft the 7 Ixis Masterworks, which may have included the creation of Chaos and Solaris. In the modern day, however, he acts much more akin to a crime lord that you could consider a pastiche of several different comic characters, using his intelligence and abilities to manipulate those around him into doing his bidding, though it's still very evident that he's incredibly powerful. Most threateningly, in one of his last direct interactions with Sonic, he professes his new plan is to simply wait Sonic out, taking advantage of the fact that he's immortal and Sonic is not. Mogul's copyright status is a little bit more complicated than the average Archie character. Much like Penders, Mogul's creator, editor Scott Fulop, obtained copyright registrations to the characters he contributed to the comics, and then proceeded to pursue legal action against Archie for reprinting his stories. However, Archie won this case, with the door being left open for it to be litigated even further if Fulop's copyright registrations were even valid. But this case actually took so long to resolve, Archie had lost the Sonic license by that time, so no further action was taken. Fulop seemed to have had some plans for Mogul if he had won, including a spin-off book and an animated feature, which as far as I know, never actually entered development. Thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank my current patron, Ned Rex, and if you want to support me, you can head over to patreon.com/hsquid. See y'all in the next video.